Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we'll see how we can import that CSV file data into Oracle database using Spring Batch job. So the job will have one step and that step will have the reader and writer. For reader, we'll be using FlatFileItemReader, and to write the data into the database, we will be using JPA item writer. And in between the reader and writer, we can have the processor, which is an optional. So in this video, we will not cover processor, but on high level, processor is used to basically transform or validate the data before writing it into the database. We will make separate video on processor. And if you see chunk here, what is chunk? Chunk means a group of records. So it is like a group of records will be read at a time, and it will be sent to the writer so that it can be persisted in a single transaction. So that is the concept of chunk. Now let's go to Spring Initializer and create a project for this example. So here I will be adding the batch dependency. Next is the web dependency. This will provide an embedded Tomcat server. As I am using Oracle, I will be adding the Oracle dependency. And for the repository layer, I will be adding the JPA dependency. After adding this dependency, I will click on generate. So this will download the zip file of the project. I have already imported one project in IntelliJ. So let me show you. So this is the project I have already imported. And to save time, I have already configured the application.properties. And apart from that, next is a CSV file. This is the CSV file we are going to read using Spring Batch. It contains two fields, name and email. Now let me show you the employee table in which we are going to store this data. So here you can see we have three columns, ID, name and email. And for ID, we will be using sequence. Also, I have created the employee.java entity here. So here you can see I have configured the sequence and also name and email columns. Now we'll be focusing more on the Spring Batch part. Now, as I mentioned, to read the data from the CSV file, we are going to use the FlatFileItemReader, and we need to provide below configuration for the reader. It contains the file location, and like each record will be mapped to which type. That will be definitely employee in our case. And if you want to skip any line, so let me first create the configuration class, and inside the configuration class, we will be defining the bean for the FlatFileItemReader. So first I will be creating the configuration class. It will be a Spring Batch config class, Spring Batch config, and as this is a configuration class, I will be using @configuration. Now we will be defining the bean for FlatFileItemReader. So it will be FlatFileItemReader employee. Why we are giving employee here? Because the reader will read each line and convert it into an employee. So we are providing the target type as employee. And to create the instance of FlatFileItemReader, we will be using the builder, return new FlatFileItemReader builder. Here also we'll provide the type as employee. Next, we need to provide any unique name here. So let me provide that. It will be a CSV reader. Now, if you see the CSV file, the first line of the CSV is the header, and we are not going to store this header in the database under the employee table. So we need to skip this. So we can do that using line to skip one. Next, we need to provide target type. As I mentioned, each row of the CSV will be mapped to employee class. So we need to provide target type. So employee.class. Next, we need to provide the resources. Resources means the file location. So I can provide that using new file system resources, and make sure you are using the forward slash. So let me just convert it into forward slash. Next, you can see each row contains two values, and that will be mapped to name and email. So we can specify that using dot delimited dot names, and I will be providing name comma email. Now we are done with the configuration of the reader. So it once I will do dot build, it will create an instance and it will returning the reader. Now next we will be focusing on the writer, and for the writer, as I mentioned, we are going to use the JPA item writer, and it requires an entity manager factory to persist the data. So let me first auto add the bean for that. So @auto add public entity manager factory. As we are using Spring Boot, entity manager factory will be available automatically. So I will be defining the bean for the writer. So public, it is JPA item writer. Again, I will provide the type as employee, and I'll be creating the instance of a writer. So here I will just create one instance of the JPA item writer. and I will set the entity manager factory here. Dot set entity manager factory, entity manager factory, and I will return this instance. So now we have configured the reader and writer. Next we will be configuring the step that will compose of the reader and writer. So let me define the bean for the step. Iterate bean public step, and let me name it as CSV to DB step. And to create the step we'll be using step builder. So it will be return new step builder. Here again we need to provide the name. So it is CSV to DB step. Now here we need to provide the job repository. I have already auto-wired it here, you can see. So let me use that. So it will be repository. Next is a chunk. As I mentioned, we'll be reading a group of records. Let's say the group size is 20, and we'll pass it to the writer to store it in the database. Here we need to provide platform transaction manager. So let me auto-wire that. Iterate auto-wire public platform transaction manager, and I will provide that here. Next I need to provide the reader. We already configured reader, so it will say FlatFileItemReader dot. Next we will be calling the writer. So for that I have already configured the JPA item writer dot build, and just we need to provide, like, the reader will be sending the employee to the writer. We can do that using employee comma employee. This defines the reader is returning employee to the writer. So we have successfully configured the step. Now the final thing is we need to configure the job. So let me define the job. Iterate bean public job. Let me name it as CSV to DB job. Let me import it first. And to create the job, again we'll be using the builder, return new job builder. Here we need to name it CSV to DB job. And again we need to provide repository here, and here we need to provide the step we have already created. So let me call that dot build. Now we have successfully configured the job as well. The final step will be creating one controller to trigger the job. So let me define the controller. It will be a REST controller. So let me first create the controller package, and inside the controller package I will be creating the REST controller to trigger the job. So let me name it as job launcher controller, and this will be a REST controller. So I will mark it at rate REST controller, and at rate request mapping, let me name it as job launcher. And to launch the job we require job launcher. So let me auto wire this public job launcher job launcher, and also we need the job. So let me auto wire the job we have created, public job, and the job name is CSV to DB job. Now let me create a simple get endpoint to trigger the job. So at get mapping public string trigger job, and here if we see job launcher dot run job, we have CSV to DB job. Now as you can see, we need to provide the job parameters. So first let me create the job parameters. So job parameters is equal to new job parameter builder dot add. I'm simply adding one parameter time, and I will get it using system dot get current time in millisecond dot to job parameters. So this will provide the job parameters. We will be passing this job parameters in the job launcher, and this will throw some of the checked exception. For now let me just add it into the method signature. So we have successfully configured the job, and to return the message let me just return any random string job launch. Now we have successfully configured the job, and also we have added the REST controller to trigger the job. So let's test this application. So I'm just starting this application, and before that let me see in the database if we have any records. Currently we don't have any records in the database, so once the application is started, we will check again by running this application whether we are successfully able to read the records and store it into the database. So let's just wait for the application to get started, and meanwhile this will be the endpoint. So let me go to Postman and check. So it will be a get endpoint, localhost 8080 job launcher. So the application has started. Now let me just hit this endpoint. Here we can see the job has successfully completed, and now we'll be going to database and check. Now here you can see we have successfully read the data from CSV file and store it into the Oracle database. If you found this content informative, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you face any errors while implementing this example, you can mention that in the comment section. I will love to help you. And also you can comment which videos you want next on this channel. Thank you. Bye bye.